I'm Kevin Davis. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, and thank you for everyone who's watching live for a little bit of patience. We had some technical difficulties as Anthony Abbate over here had, for whatever reason, the devil didn't want him to have a nice microphone and stuff for the show, so he's going to be on an iPad. So we appreciate him figuring it out in the last minute. For whatever reason, just technical issues just have to happen every now and then. But the show is with Mario Derksen, Novus Ordo Watch, and Anthony Abbate of Avoiding Babylon. And the show kind of comes from a couple of videos going back and forth between Anthony and between Mario about the topic of Sedevacantism. And really, we just kind of wanted to pop on and have a nice chat. It's one of those things I think I don't really know Anthony. So Anthony, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining the show. It's nice to see you. And I think that Mario and I we've been, I don't know if was it friends. We've been followers of Anthony a long time on Twitter, especially X. And I, speaking for myself, I like Anthony because he can have an honest debate, an honest discussion without getting polemic, without getting nasty, and just kind of have, hey, what are the actual issues? Yeah. And I think that's what we all kind of enjoy, that we appreciate that about each other, where it's kind of like, okay, this doesn't have to be mean. This doesn't have to be nasty. We're just kind of a nice conversation. And we appreciate the chat. We already have a lot of people in the chat. So thank you guys. Thank you to my dad for moderating that. That's going to be interesting. Good luck with that. And the way I wanted to start the show is to try to real quickly introduce both Mario and Anthony to perhaps new viewers. I don't know if everyone watches Anthony over on Avoiding Babylon, and obviously from his viewers checking in, they may not know Mario. So Anthony, as our esteemed guest, if you want to just maybe tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why do you have a Catholic podcast?
That's a good question. I am a construction worker from New York. I started my podcast because during COVID, I was being told that if I didn't get the shot, I was going to get fired. So my first video was just about trying to just encourage people to not give into it. And I was ready to walk away from my career, everything. I was like, I'm not getting this thing. Then that kind of developed into just talking about theology, and then I wound up doing a trivia show, and now it's kind of just developed into me and my friend just talking about cultural issues, the church, whatever's on our mind. But it managed to grow a bit, and yeah. So I mean, I have no qualifications. I'm a high school dropout, so I don't know. It's basically just some dumb guinea from New York that likes to talk.
And so you've had it since 2020, 21?
I think 21. I think April 21 is when I started.
It's interesting. I had to comment because that's the exact reason why I started this channel, was because I was just sick. Honestly, I was sick of always talking about COVID. So every time I met with my friends, I was like, COVID. I was like, okay, I'm kind of tired of this. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about faith and culture and being manly. That was one of the first topics was how to try to be a man. And that's kind of interesting that's the same for you as well.
Now, Anthony, you got a pretty good following there for your show, though, right?
Yeah, well, I think we're at 41,000 now. I don't know how the hell it happened, but it was. I think a lot of people were tired of just it was always a PhD in theology, just kind of lecturing them and stuff. And then I think people like our show just because I'm just a regular guy. My friend Rob, same thing. And the two of us just, whatever the hell's on our mind, I think, people can relate to us a bit. I think that's why.
All just trying to avoid Babylon. So that's good.
Fair enough. So Mario, how about you? For those who don't know you already, maybe tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. My name is Mario Derksen. I am a layman. And I was raised Novus Ordo in the 1980s. And I went to Novus Ordo Seminary for 2 years in the late 1990s. And it was a seminary experience where I was ironically first introduced to traditionalism, kind of on the side. This was obviously not a part of the curriculum. And I eventually converted first to an indult position, and then to more of an SSPX position. And finally to Sedevacantism. That would have happened in late 2003. And so I've been a Sedevacantist ever since. My education is in philosophy, my formal education. And other than that, I used to do financial work, and well, I still do now for Novus Ordo Watch. I founded Novus Ordo Watch as a website in 2002, and in 2016 made it into a nonprofit organization, which it is now. So that's what I do now for a living, and I'm looking forward to having an interesting and exciting chat.
How old are you, Mario?
I am 46.
40. You're a little bit older than me. I remember like I've been watching your stuff for so long. Like I remember like my first encounter with Sedevacantism was actually like the Diamond Brothers, right?
So yes, I know what you mean.
I'm like a Lighthouse Catholic Media, Scott Hahn, Franciscan University watching Catholic. Yeah. And I come across the Diamond Brothers and I was like, what is this? Like, I'm like, this isn't Protestantism. Like, what is this? And then like over the years, I've gotten to understand a little bit of the position. I've never really done like a deep dive into it, but I know there's several different positions you guys hold. It's not like it's not a uniform Sedevacantist position, right?
Yeah, I want to make clear that although a lot of people, first come in touch with Sedevacantism through the Diamond Brothers, and in my case, I'm trying to remember now. I don't know if it was no, I don't think it was the first sort of encounter, but certainly their material was on my radar very early on. And that's really unfortunate because the Diamond Brothers aren't even Catholics, really. I mean, sure, they get a lot right about what has happened, since the death of Pope Pius XII in 1958 and then Vatican II and all that.
Uh-oh, we lose you?
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. Well, Mario just got his internet fixed. I know that. So let's see. Hopefully Mario joins us again. But finishing what he's saying, and I know the line of thought he's going on is that they actually do provide a lot of good material, but it's filled with more than a few drops of poison because they're not just Feniites. They're not just believing in only in baptism of blood and desire. That they go down other roads. That they pretty much they put themselves above doctors of the church. They say they know more than Council of Trent, etc. And it's kind of a ridiculous thing. It's another reason why we continue on this channel, because like, okay, we can't let the Diamond Brothers be the only form of Catholic media out there, or Sedevacantist material out there. It's a mess.
They get a little wild with some of their apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah,
and like they're like telling people like how exactly the Book of Revelation should be interpreted, and I'm like, these guys are really. I mean, they're very entertaining. I'll give them that.
Hey guys, am I back? I'm sorry.
You're back, Mario. Yep. Great.
And right as we're talking about that, I bet you the Diamond Brothers are going to use that as evidence that when somebody talks against
Mario avoided the fight.
Direct divine intervention. Yeah. What was I saying? I'm sorry. I don't know what the last thing.
I continued your thoughts that the Diamond Brothers are a mess, pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Diamond Brothers aren't even Catholics. They happen to be right on a lot of things, and they happen to be right about the last 6 papal claimants not being true popes. But if you
man, what is that?
I've been looking so forward to this conversation.
Oh, come on, Mario. We just fixed this issue, didn't we?
Hang on. I'm going to run. Okay, wait a minute. I got to make sure that this is not. I can't believe this. Hang on. I'm going to run.
The first show of you guys I caught, I think you guys had Lou Verrecchio on, and I checked out one of your episodes. You guys are like, so the first thing I'll say is, Mario, you're probably the most charitable online Sedevacantist I've ever encountered. Like
I am.
Even like when you and I have disagreed, it's you and WM Review are like always approach the thing like just about the subject matter. It's never you don't spiral like a lot of the online Sedevacantists I've encountered. So I always had good interactions with you and WM Review.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I can be very polemical. It usually kind of depends on. Look, I never have a problem, speaking kindly and charitably with anyone who's trying to figure this out, and just regular people. When I get kind of combative is with people who either do know better or should know better, and who influence a lot of people. Like, for example, Peter Kwasniewski. Okay, I can get very aggressive with him because, let's maybe not get into all that now. But
don't ruin any of my friendships out here, Mario.
No. I just
relationships.
Yeah, no.
So that would be my question for you, Anthony. I mean, just basically, then, what is your view of the church? So I think basically, and I'll have Mario explain basically what Sedevacantism is, because as you said, there are a lot of different paths you can go down, but basically it's pretty simple that we basically believe there hasn't been a pope since 1958 for various reasons. So I'll ask you then, what do you think is the situation in the church?
Oof, I think we would both agree that something happened around that time period, right? Like, I think we would all agree there was a major crisis. That I came into the church and, like, reading the church fathers. Not that I came into the church. I'm a cradle Catholic. I've been Catholic my whole life. I just lived. There was a period of my life I lived as though God didn't exist, but I never didn't believe in God. But then I start actually studying the faith, and I come into the faith, and I'm presented with the Novus Ordo, and something's not connecting, right? I'm like, okay, like you're reading Irenaeus and all these guys, and they're like ready to go and die for what they believe, and then you're presented with this happy clappy thing at church, and you're like, what? Like, what's going on here? So then, as you go on, for me at least, like as I went on, once I found, I guess I'm a little further back on Mario's journey, right? So I then find tradition, and I go into that, and where I think that things are so messy right now. I kind of give a lot of I give a lot of latitude to people that come to different conclusions. I don't know what happened at that time period. I just know something happened at that time period. I think that when Paul VI lays down his papal tiara, there's something very symbolic and significant about that event, as if the Pope is laying down his authority and giving it over to the world. Like, I think a lot of the things that we'll talk about, we're going to agree on. It's just the end point of saying none of those popes were valid is something I haven't come to. So, especially because the starting point for that would be too guessing and having theories, and there's no way to prove it. Like, I've heard different things about, like, John the 23rd being a Freemason. I don't know how that would work out with actually showing that there's proof of that. But I do think we would all agree something happened.
Something is definitely wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, I like to remember, or I like to keep in mind that if this were 1957, none of these issues, we'd be discussing none of these issues now. We'd be all in the same church, in the same pew, at the same mass, so to speak, yeah. Right? Using the same catechism, submitting to the same pope, and so on. It really, all of this, what we call the crisis, even though crisis doesn't even come close to describing what it is. It's an utter calamity of historic proportions. All of it is, in some sense, a response to Vatican II, right? It's like, okay, the council happened, and everybody says, now what? What is this, right? And maybe I can briefly tell you why I was convinced, what convinced me to become a Sedevacantist. Because, so as I already alluded to, I spent, a good amount of time in the Novus Ordo, although I was very young. But I've seen everything a little bit. I've certainly seen the Novus Ordo from the inside, especially also the seminary. But I had my time with the SSPX, and I had my time in the indult movement. What I realized at some point, so I found it, what the SSPX was saying regarding the problems with the new mass, and reading the literature, Dr. Kumaraswamy, for example, right, Father Cicada's translation of the Ottaviani intervention, and so on. All of that rang true for me. It made a lot of sense, and I could see, and I had, of course, experienced, right? I had experienced the great nonsense that is ecumenism, right? When I was see, I basically the what was inconsistent to me was that on the one hand, you can't claim to be the true church, and then on the other hand say, but okay, but all these Protestants, they're fine too, you know, we're not in full communion, but we're working on that. Instead of converting them, we're just trying to, you know, do ecumenism. That never made sense to me, right? I could easily see,
I would agree, yeah,
right? Could see that contradiction. And then, of course, when you read the papal magisterium, right, the encyclicals from before Vatican II, and I was actually doing that in seminary, and I, you know, I read more, you know, Mortalium Animos and Mediator Dei and Humani Generis, and there's so many good encyclicals, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, we're doing everything that they condemned, you know. That the popes condemned before Vatican II. And especially when I read Pius XI on ecumenism, I said, you know what, this is exactly how I would expect, now that I think about it, that's how I would expect a real Catholic pope to speak about the subject matter, right? And then comes Vatican II, and they have their decrees on ecumenism and all that. And it's got all this mealy-mouthed stuff about, you know, how the Holy Ghost uses them as means of salvation, and it's imperfect communion, and you know, a real, what was it that I always like to say? It's a real, like an imperfect but very real communion, and all this sort of like, what does this mean? You know, and right, and so you could tell like something is really amiss, and then you find out that, interestingly enough, the council never bothered to try to explain how it is, how the teaching on ecumenism, how its view of ecumenism is consistent with Pius XI and the prior magisterium. They didn't even bring up the document. Right? John Paul II wrote a huge encyclical in 1995 on ecumenism, does not mention Pius XI even once. And, you know, all of these things made me think. And then I'm like, okay, well, I can see all this stuff, this Novus Ordo, so this is wrong. This was condemned, and it was condemned on doctrinal grounds, not just, oh, you know, but you can do it this way or you can do it that way. Not just disciplinary things that can change and that are fine in themselves. And then, so that's why I was with the SSPX eventually, because I said, well, obviously we have to resist this. This isn't right. And what then convinced me to abandon the SSPX position is that I found out that the Catholic Church teaches, in Auctorum Fidei, for example, Pope Pius VI, that the Church cannot give to the faithful evil laws or heretical laws, disciplinary laws, worship, and so on, that is harmful, that is evil. And I kind of froze, because at that point I realized, like, the writing was on the wall. You know what this means, right? Because I couldn't deny that the Novus Ordo was evil, that this was wrong in itself. Like, not just, oh, it's the, you know, they're not reverent enough in this parish, so I'll go to the other parish. I'm talking about the rite itself. And then I realized, well, if it's impossible for the church to do that, then this can't be the Catholic Church. Then John Paul II, at the time, he can't be the Pope, right? And that really opened my eyes. And then also the realization that Paul VI had promulgated the documents, each of the 16 documents of Vatican II, with the full weight of his apostolic authority. When I realized that that's what happened, I at first I tried to see if there's maybe a way out, and I listened to a bunch of, you know, anti-Sedevacantism arguments. None of it I found convincing anymore. And I said, no, this is crystal clear. We don't even have to know, like, I don't have to know why Paul VI wasn't the true Pope. I can tell that he wasn't, right? Even I'd like to know why. I'd like to know the cause. But the fact remains that regardless, he can't have been the Pope. It's impossible, right? So that's the quick.
So it's basically you just saw too big of a contradiction between what the Novus Ordo presents and the Catholic faith. Now, do you guys hold that Novus Ordo orders are invalid? Like, are those priests? Are those bishops?
I don't believe so. Kevin, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I certainly think they're doubtful. I mean, I think it's actually something I just asked a veteran priest to do a show about this, because I think it's a really good topic, and I think a complicated one, because it's something that it comes down to one of the primary issues people point at Sedevacantism for, is like, well, how do you have the authority to say that it is not valid? And it's like, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, the church is not judged that it's invalid, obviously, because the hierarchy of the church is the one that's doing it right now. So we would say that they're not the actual hierarchy. But I as far as I understand, it's certainly doubtful, and that creates a very big issue.
Okay, so how does it? Because I think an interesting conversation is like that puts it in a situation where this has to be apocalyptic, right? Like, this is end of the world stuff we're talking about. This isn't
just a little crisis.
Yeah, this is apocalyptic at that point. Like, we are talking about something so big, like we no longer have. I mean, man, that's so. Like, how does that get fixed?
First, I want to say that if you look at the evidence and you're convinced that certainly the Episcopal consecrations, which of course is the more important part of holy orders, the more important degree, it's called, right? Because without valid bishops, you can't make valid priests. So even if the priestly ordination is valid in itself, if priestly orders are not being conferred by a valid bishop, you have nothing, right? What was I going to say? If you believe that that's invalid, there's no way you can hold that Paul VI was a true pope, right? It's impossible for the pope to promulgate a sacramental rite for the conferral of the sacraments, in this case, holy orders, that is invalid. That's absolutely impossible, because that would mean the church has defected. It would mean the church is unable to guarantee the validity of her own sacraments, right? Now, I'm just mentioning that because if I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank now. Some people, so what I'm saying is, what you cannot do is say Paul VI was the Pope and then it's still invalid, which some people in the SSPX do, or at least did. I'm not sure anymore what's going on with that now, but certainly when I was there, a lot of people believed that the Episcopal consecrations were invalid, which is why in December of 2005, after Ratzinger had been elected that year, they had to come out with some kind of, oh, by the way, here's proof it's valid. That just shows that that was not what they believed before, or at least it was, maybe some people did, but by no means was that the SSPX position, right? That it's valid. That didn't come until after Ratzinger was elected. So in theory, I mean, the position regarding the validity or invalidity of the sacraments is only as strong as the evidence, right? So in theory, you can be a Sedevacantist and still believe these are valid sacraments if you're not convinced by the evidence, right? So those are not necessarily tied to one another. I just want to make that clear. Now, I think the evidence that the Episcopal consecrations are invalid is overwhelming. And I don't know if this is the topic you want to get into, but maybe.
Honestly, I'm just curious about stuff, because like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I've never actually like dug into this stuff. Like, I'm curious what you guys make of the miracles in the Novus Ordo, like the Eucharistic miracles. You guys just hold those aren't even legit at all, like they're faked, or?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the way I would know whether a miracle has occurred is for the church would have to tell me, yes, this is worthy of belief, right? And so that begs the question, well, is that even the church, right? So to me, these sort of supposed miracles that they come up with are, this argument is dead on arrival, because the only way you would know it's a miracle is because your church or that church tells you, right? So you can't really use that as evidence for the Novus Ordo Church without assuming that the Novus Ordo Church is the Catholic Church.
I'm going more like even if if you had the one in Buenos Aires that had Bergoglio as the bishop there, right? And then they do these scientific tests on it, and it ends up, it shows, the AB blood type, and it's, living heart tissue all that stuff. Like, is that whole thing a scam, or I don't know?
Well, it would have to be, because it would give testimony to a false religion and and to the Novus Ordo Mass. God doesn't work miracles in order to benefit the Novus Ordo Mass, right? Of course, that argument obviously you can only use if you're already convinced of Sedevacantism. But since you asked me what do I make of it,
Yeah,
I don't look at it at all. It doesn't. See, one of the things our Lord told us to watch out for precisely was false miracles, right? And so it could, a lot of these things that seem very like miraculous to us don't have to be miraculous at all. There's a lot of things demons can accomplish as far as switching out substances and so on. I'm not really well versed in that area, but I remember Bishop Sanborn, I believe, he's a Sedevacantist bishop, talking about that. And it took the church, I don't know exactly, like maybe 15 years or something to approve the miracle of the sun at Fatima.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In our day and age, people would look at a YouTube video and be convinced it's a miracle. Like, well, that church doesn't work that way, and so I'm just saying, those alleged miracles, and that's not I'm not trying to accuse any particular person of deliberately being deceptive. No, I just think that they couldn't possibly be real miracles. And our Lord did warn us that the signs and wonders, if you look at Matthew 24, signs and wonders will be so great that even the elect would be deceived if it were possible. So in other words, we really have to be on our guard not to, basically don't go by unapproved miracles, right? By rumors of miracles.
Well, typically in salvation history, when great claims are made, there are miracles that accompany it, right? So I know you don't look for signs of miracles, but like if you're positing that church, that the Novus Ordo that is being presented to us is not the church, you would expect like miracles to accompany the people making the claim. Like there would be saints that are pulling Padre Pio level. I mean, I would just think that. Like, I mean, or anything. I just it would be like if Martin Luther was correct, there would have been miracles to go along with it because.
Yeah. Well, okay, I know what you mean, but even that would be absurd because in the Catholic Church, like the deposit of faith ended with, rather, revelation closed, right? Public revelation closed with the death of the last apostle. So if God forbid Martin Luther had appeared to work miracles, you'd have to reject that as well, because we know he's wrong. And God couldn't possibly have worked miracles through Martin Luther to prove it's right. You have, like, I just saw Father Geckel chiming in regarding you don't need miracles when you have a teaching church.
I hope people realize we're not debating. Like
we're
just having a conversation.
We're just chatting. Yeah.
Like we're not. I'm literally just asking questions. But
no, they're good questions. And I think,
yes.
And I don't know if you've. I'm sure you probably haven't watched it yet, Anthony. But there's a video we just did this last week with Louis Verrecchio about the beginning of Lumen Gentium. And again, I think Mario would agree with me. If you go back to the actual documents and see what they say, I always have heard the subsists in line. I'm sure you've heard that, subsists in rather than is the Catholic Church. I've always heard that, and I thought that sounds pretty bad. That sounds like that shouldn't be in a Catholic document. But then actually, when I actually read it with Louis in context, it's way worse. It's way worse in context. Like out of context, it's bad, but you actually read it in context, and then actually read the response they had when I think it was Cardinal Ottaviani, one of the more conservative bishops or cardinals, wrote them a letter saying, "Why are you changing this?" They answered in writing, and they just said pretty much, "Yeah, because we need to be more ecumenical." Obviously, paraphrasing.
See,
that's a problem. Oof.
Yeah, it's a very big problem. My biggest problem with the council documents have to do with relations to with saying that the Muslims worship one God and saying the Jews worship one God. Like if you go back to John 8, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and he's like, you do not worship, you are not sons of Abraham. If you were sons of Abraham, you would love me, and you don't love me, so your father is the devil. Like, you're talking about, that is like my biggest hang up. It's not even the religious liberty stuff, because I think religious liberty in context of like America, you kind of like, you almost have to do it. But I'm not a theologian either. So, but my biggest issue with those council documents is that the other religions worship demons. So to say that the Muslims, along with us, worship the one God, that, like, it's problematic for me. Whether I say it's heretical or not, I don't know if I go that far. It's just very problematic in the way they worded it. And a lot of this I would see as going along with the relationship between the people of the Old Covenant and the people of the New Covenant, and them trying to mess with the church as they have throughout history. And I would kind of probably fall on Father Maudsley's line of thinking, in that they probably infiltrated the council to some degree because you just got out of World War II, and they had that whole narrative going, and then that comes into the council, and there's this guilt. You get a Polish Pope who supposedly witnessed all this, and I mean that's my biggest hang up with the council, is the ecumenism idea. Like, it really is absurd to think that you could have ecumenical outreach and have dialogue for the sake of dialogue. Is preposterous.
Yeah, I think certainly ecumenism, I think, is the biggest or the most obvious doctrine in which they demonstrate the incompatibility with the pre-Vatican II magisterium, right? And because if you look at what they're doing with ecumenism today, and it's all based on Vatican II. I mean, they're the ones, right? It's their council. They I know Benedict talked about the council of the media, right? Oh, they're distorting the true council. Well, excuse me, you people have been implementing the council for decades. Don't be telling me about some council of the media. The New York Times didn't implement the council. It was you people, and Ratzinger more than anyone, perhaps, in his lifetime, right?
I still see like the idea that the popes are invalid is just like such a giant leap, though. I think there's room for it to be like just unfaithfulness, because that's happened throughout salvation history. Like, so all right, so let's get into the Daniel prophecy, right? That was one of the things I talked about in the video. Like like Daniel talks about in Daniel 2, he says their sovereignty will never pass to another people. Now, to me, if you have the Novus Ordo taken over by another people, I don't see how that prophecy stays fulfilled. So I know you had an argument against that, but
I would ask what you mean by that. Who's saying it goes to another people, or
well, what? You'd have to bring up Daniel 2. I think I read it in my video, but he talks about it's Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Nebuchadnezzar is the dream of the head of gold, the chest of silver, and then like when he gets to the end, it's the Roman Empire basically is the feet of iron and clay, and that crumbles, and like he talks about how this kingdom will cover the earth and its sovereignty will never pass to another people. Like, if I don't see how another religion taking over the church and convincing everyone that it's the Catholic Church, I don't see how that's not like not that.
I mean, I just kind of filed that under mystery of iniquity. That is certainly all extremely difficult, extremely mysterious, and stuff. And that's but I always emphasize, it's to have mystery and to not have all the answers is compatible with Catholicism. What's not compatible is contradiction. So we know what can't happen is you can't have the true Catholic hierarchy defecting and teaching error, right? Teaching heresy, leading the faithful astray. And yet we have to somehow make sense of Vatican II and everything that has happened since. And so, of course, the first thing you do, just very naturally, and that I used to do as well, is at first you say, okay, well, obviously there must be something I'm not understanding, right? There's something I don't get it. Somehow this is all compatible, and we just need to interpret it in the right way. And right. And that's when people like kind of attach themselves to like certain conservative figures. And, you know, maybe in 1966, that could still be done in good faith, right? Like right after the council, when there was still, you know, you had these weird documents with a lot of ambiguity. You could interpret it this way, could interpret it that way. But you know, this is 2025, and so the noble, like the post-conciliar magisterium, has been interpreting the council for 60 years. So we know what the council means, we know what the council meant, and they themselves are adamant in a way that it's not the same as it was before, right? It's not the same. I mean, you try teaching the social kingship of Christ in Novus Ordo parish, good luck.
Yeah,
right?
I think we both agree there's something insane happening. I think we both think this is apocalyptic. Like I think we're in agreement on that. Like whatever is happening is apocalyptic.
Yeah,
and it's not. Okay, so I think you and I had the disagreement one time where I said, the reason I have a hard time taking the Sede position and trying to get other people to it is because if it's wrong, you'll have it on your conscience on Judgment Day. Like you'll have to answer to God for trying to pull people out of His church. And in practicality, like in reality, I don't see how much different your like everyday lived Catholic faith is different from mine, unless you're saying that when I go to mass, those sacraments are invalid. Like that's a huge issue there, right? But if sacramental orders are still what they are, I think everybody's kind of in a position now where things are so bad at your local Novus Ordo, so you go find somewhere that you can survive what the hell is going on right now and raise your family cat. And I think that so many people right now, I don't, you know, that's just kind of.
Well, yeah. So I don't know, of course, what your daily Catholic life is like, so I can't say how much difference there will be. But if there isn't much of a difference, then I would say that actually shows your position is wrong, because what you should be doing is basically, if Leo the 14th is the Pope and it's all legit and this is the Catholic Church, you should be full-blown fan of Leo, basically, right? Or at least, or I mean, you know, we're talking about like at least the official magisterial acts, right? And so on. So I used to think that when I was in the SSPX, I used to think that SSPX and Sedevacantism, the only difference, I used to basically think that Sedevacantism is the SSPX position minus the Pope. Okay, that's what I thought. Like, oh, and then you kind of don't want to go there. It's not for me to say. It's not my judgment. Who am I? But it wasn't until I realized, no, that's not at all how it is. Rather, the SSPX position is resistance against what they acknowledge as the lawful ecclesiastical hierarchy. Resistance, not just, with regard to like, individual, like say a bishop giving a sinful command to an individual. Obviously, you'd have to say no, right? Because you're not allowed to sin. No, we're talking about, especially the SSPX, it's a wholesale rejection of essentially the post-conciliar magisterium. I mean, they're the ones that will go through the magisterial documents and say, okay, this, check, we can accept this. Yep, that sounds good. Maybe a little problematic. We'll see that one. Oh no, definitely not. It's like they're raising themselves as an authority over the magisterium. Whereas the Sedevacantists says, no, a Catholic cannot do that. God didn't give the keys to Archbishop Lefebvre. He gave the keys to the Pope, to whoever is the lawful Pope. And so I realized at some point that, no, it's actually quite a different view. The resistance is what is, I know this is kind of cliche, but the whole resistance stuff, it actually is schismatic in the true sense of the word. Now, I understand that the motives may be noble, right? I get that. I'm not questioning that. But the essence of schism is this rebellion against the lawful authority. It doesn't matter if you think you have a good reason. In a way, every schismatic and heretic thinks he has a good reason, right? So it was more like, no, in that sense, in terms of submission to the hierarchy, Sedevacantism is actually quite similar to the Novus Ordo position, because the Novus Ordo position actually retains the pre-Vatican II Catholic position on submission to the hierarchy. And so that's why sometimes people say, this is strange bedfellows, Sedevacantists and Novus Orders, they're all hyper-papalists. We're not hyper-papalists. Actually, maybe we can talk about this briefly, right? Ultramontanism and all that stuff. Honestly, what gets decried as hyper-papalism is simply the Catholic teaching that's on the books. That's all it is.
It is a bizarre time we're in, man.
Right? And I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to just briefly to Peter Kwasniewski, because he's on record actually rejecting pre-Vatican II papal statements by like Pius X. Saint Pius X. He's accused him of liturgical modernism. Like, where does this resistance stop? We're finding out it doesn't stop. And Peter Kwasniewski is, honestly, when I read his stuff, I can tell there's only one authority he's following ultimately, and that's himself.
But I don't see how the Sedevacantists isn't also, though. Like, I know you're saying, you're just following what the church did before, but I see that. Like, when you're getting into the SSPX, I think there's a lot of people that go to the SSPX that do probably hold the Sede position. Not everybody, obviously.
I think so, yeah.
There's a lot of people who are just like, I'm a Sede, but I want to go to Mass, so they're going to Mass there. I just don't know how it gets. I don't know how it gets solved, man. It's like, it just seems like such a big gap to go and just say, like, I don't see how the church hasn't defected if you're saying there's no pope for this many years, this long, this many consecutive invalid popes that keep getting elected. I don't see how that gets fixed other than some insane divine intervention at that point.
Well, I think even this is the problem, right? This is one of the great mysteries we have to deal with here. Because even with divine intervention, just from a theological perspective, I'm not sure how that could be, like how that would work, because public revelation has ended. So wouldn't divine intervention mean there is new revelation we have to accept? I don't know, but that's an argument I've heard, and I thought it was a pretty good argument. And so, how is it all going to be resolved? God knows. I don't have a good, easy answer on that. Of course, for the recognize and resistor, the question is, okay, so then at what point do you say, okay, we're back to normal now. Now submission to the Pope is necessary again. Now you must once again assent to what the Pope teaches. You've already destroyed it all, right? Maybe unwittingly, but like with the position, there's nothing left. Now you said, how is it that the church has not defected if there hasn't been a Pope in so many years, right? We're saying since 1958. That's over. What are we at now? Almost 70 years. Getting pretty close. Well, the defection would mean that, well, certainly defection. You have defection in the recognize and resist position, precisely because they're like, what are they resisting? Well, they're resisting actually the defection. What is simply having a pope who teaches heresy or other very dangerous errors? What good is it, right?
Well, what about like, okay, so like, would God hide himself from the simple folk, right? Like you have, because I made the comment and everybody kind of got down on me for it, but it does seem like Sedevacantism is very much an internet phenomenon now. I'm not saying, like, obviously there were Sedevacantists right from the beginning before the internet, right. But it seems like it's only for those willing to go in and study this stuff with a high scholastic view of everything. But what about like the simple, lowly, humble person living wherever that they just want to be a devout Catholic and go to church? Like, I don't know how God would hide his church from that person, or like where there's no access to it at all.
Yeah. Although, honestly, I don't know how the simple folk wouldn't have why they wouldn't just say, okay, well, wait a minute, this is not the Mass. This is some kind of Protestant meal service. That can't come from the Catholic Church. We're not talking about really terribly difficult stuff. It's all Baltimore Catechism stuff, really, right? And ecumenism and all these things. I mean, anyone in the Novus Ordo can tell something is really wrong, at least if you've been raised in the pre-Vatican II faith, if you're familiar with it, if you know it. And then, I mean, what is the alternative? Well, the alternative would be the recognize and resist position, where you have to turn to academics like Peter Kwasniewski, or to journalists, right, or to YouTubers, who will then tell you whether you can follow the Pope on this or that matter. I mean, honestly, that's I don't think that's an improvement. I mean, I get your point. You know, it's, of course, now that we have the internet, everything is a lot easier that way. But I mean, originally, and Kevin, I don't know if you can ask your parents maybe about this, how they came to Sedevacantism, but you know, originally it was just people saying that this is impossible.
Yeah,
This
it was
is like
my dad's a convert, and my mom's father, it stood up one time, saw them changing the mass, and stood up during the mass. I'm sure you've heard these stories before. Stood up and said, "Nope, we're not doing this anymore," and looked and did his own research again without the internet, and eventually found a traditional mass in Denver. So they lived on the East Coast, and they moved all the way to Colorado to be able to attend that. So I think there are many stories like that of Sedevacantists who just said, in that time, I can't do this.
You grew up raised Sedevacantist?
I did, yeah. From birth.
I don't think I've ever met somebody that was raised Sedevacantist.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So wait, now, did you have interaction with like your typical Novus Ordo Catholic growing up, or were you pretty like clustered into like just being raised around other settings?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we were homeschooled, so we had a homeschooling group. We had a very nice parish with a lot of young families in Denver, Colorado, with Father Eugene Berry, who was one of the 9 who broke away from Lefebvre, from the SSPX. And it was a very good parish, so we didn't really need to. We had plenty of friends who were Sedevacantist homeschooling group, but we did also have some interactions with other homeschooling groups that were also Novus Ordo. And, you know, my mom would maybe she would explain, like, hey, you know, they had to tell us what that meant. You know, what was Sedevacantism, and that's an interesting thing, because I have 3 young children now. My oldest is 5, and as a 5, you know, with a 5-year-old, you have to explain these things to a young mind, and that is really interesting, and it makes you really have to actually understand it, right? So I mean, it's actually much easier talking to Mario and, you know, kind of fleshing it out than I have to talk to a 5-year-old. Like, okay, you know, Daddy, why do they, you know, why do they go to church, but it's not the right church? And it's like, oh boy, you know, and it's tough. Well, it is a hard thing.
It's kind of like the Protestant kid that grew up down the block from me, whose mother told him that all Catholics go to hell. So like he would see me and he'd be like, "You're a Catholic, you're going to hell." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, because I was kind of, you know, I grew up with 8 siblings. My parents just kept us in our Catholic community too, until I met this kid and he told me I'm going to hell. But
no, but I mean, I'd say from our side, I mean, my parents were obviously always charitable about that. They're in the chat. Hi, Mom and Dad, by the way. And they you know, they would say more like, you know, these are people trying to be Catholic, and they are Catholic. They just don't have, you know, they don't have all of the answers that we have. And I think that's a really important thing. I'm sure Mario would agree that there's the objective and the subjective. You know, I think the objectively, we would argue certainly our position, because we have come to that, you know, believe that position. But subjectively, who is a Catholic? That's a really, really complicated, really tough decision, where it's like, I certainly don't go around saying, "Oh, you're Novus Ordite, so yeah, good luck in hell."
It's so funny because I got so many messages before with you guys, like people like, "Why are you going on with it?" What? Like, I don't understand why you can't. Yeah, I don't understand why you can't have a conversation with somebody that you don't have the same position. I think everybody's afraid you guys are gonna like bring me in to Sedevacantism, but I'm really just curious because I've never really dug into this stuff a lot, and it's interesting to actually hear like what brought you over to it, and what to me, I'm more interested in like what does the future look like, and like what does the resolution look like, and what do we do going forward, and how does this play out? Because I don't think it's. I mean, look, we're all sitting here talking about how insane the crisis is, and we all agree on that. I just don't know what the way forward is. I don't know what happens from here.
Yeah. I always tell people now, just be Catholic. That's what you can do. That's all, right? And I mean, I don't know how it's going to end, but I do know it can't last. I think I know it can't last that much longer. I mean, it
I
is
don't think
insane, right? And this is something that Griff Ruby, I think, came up, or at least is where I got it from. Shortly after the council, Frank Sheed, who was a Catholic apologist from Australia, and he had a publishing house together with his wife, and they published some really scary stuff. They also published a lot of good stuff, but so I don't quite know what to make of Frank Sheed. But he published a book in 1968, right? So just about 3 years after the council, entitled, "Is It the Same Church?"
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Like 3 years later, this is the question people were asking. Now, of course, he answers, yes, it is the same church. But that's not even the point. The point is that's how drastic the change was.
I think it was so drastic that 60% of Catholics stopped going to mass, right? They stopped. They were like, this isn't. I mean, my wife watches some old English lady, Nigella. She's like a cooking show on YouTube. And the lady, like, randomly one day, she's cooking. She's like, oh, I grew up a Catholic, but when they changed the mass, I had to stop going because it just wasn't my church. And my wife was like, she couldn't wait to tell me this, She was like,
really?
This old English lady who's like in her 70s. And she's like, oh, when they changed the mass, I just had to stop going to church because they took my church away, And I think a lot of people had that experience. And yeah, I mean, we're not going to disagree on how absurd it is. I mean, especially the past decade or so, the things we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, with Francis, yeah. Of course. I mean, Francis, in a way, like for us, he was like a gift of sorts. I mean,
yeah, of course.
I mean, it was so easy. It was so easy to make our case. All you just needed to do was let him talk.
Well, he was a gift to all. He was a gift to all traditional Catholics too, because he really did make people go, and then especially when you added COVID into it, but like he made people go, wait, something's going on here, and you started getting people who were faithful, Novus Ordo Catholics who were like, I want to find something authentic. So they started searching out the Latin Mass, and now you have this high concentration of, like, a lot of them are converts. A lot of them are just they were at the Novus Ordo, and they're just all concentrated in these traditional parishes now. So it really is an interesting Francis effect. When they talk about the Francis effect, the Francis effect in reality was driving. He was like the great divider. Like, you were either driven to tradition or you really got sucked into the Novus Ordo world, and you were like defending gay blessings. And like there was only two ways to go about that.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of people, like, I'm going to say crack, but I mean they just, a lot of people had to really make a decision. Am I going to just can I continue with my conservative Novus Ordo position, or do I have to become more like, at least like the remnant, traditionalist, like recognize and resist traditionalist, or even Sedevacantism? A lot of people were asking themselves that question. And it's why you saw some people, like Ralph Martin, for example, at some point he couldn't be silent anymore. Like, this is wrong, what's happening here, right? And now if you look at the Catholic teaching on the papacy, a lot of it came in the 19th century, and also, of course, the 20th century. And it is so beautiful how it continually makes clear that the Roman pontiff, the role of the papacy in the Catholic churches, that is the principle of unity. And it is what guarantees the church's orthodoxy until the end of time. And when I read all these things, I like, okay, there is then even though I don't have all the answers, I must conclude that these men were not popes, and it has nothing to do with like arrogance or judgmentalism, or we're as if we had like ecclesiastical authority could make all such decisions. No, it's simply a matter of logical consequence. Like, you can't hold contradictions, right? It's impossible. And contradictions are false. You're not supposed to hold them.
Well, and it's more than that. Like, like the Novus Ordo is, I think, it's helped lead to so much confusion. Like even things like the transgender movement, like there's something so twisted about having altar girls, like, and it really does confuse the genders, and it mixes it all in, like, and the I mean, we're in an insane crisis right now. It's just, I don't know. There was something about like going to my first Latin mass where I was like, oh, this is Catholicism, you know, and like what I was going to didn't feel like Catholicism once I went to a traditional Latin mass. So yeah, like I don't even know if I would describe myself as recognize and resist. I actually just think it's so bad that different people are going to come to different conclusions, and I think that a lot of the people, like a lot of people that I'm very good friends with, who, when Leo was elected, even were like, no, even like people I really do like, and they're very smart, and they're not public about it, but they're like, no, I don't know, this still isn't Catholicism. It's not like Leo came in and fixed it.
It's always going to be Vatican II. Well, I mean, yes, at least for the false popes. I mean, they may, you know, maybe a little bit softer. They may kind of hit the brakes on certain ecumenical activities, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be, because what are they? I mean, what are they supposed to do? Like from the Novus Ordo perspective, do you really think they're going to say, okay, hang on, we're going to cancel the following documents of the papal magisterium, you know, from their perspective. Right?
So what do you think this is? Do you think this is like the period of Peter hiding in the garden, like running after he denies Christ, and we just don't have a pope right now? Like, I don't know how this works typologically. I don't know how this works.
Oh,
like,
man.
Like, is it just the end of the world has to come for this to get fixed?
No, I don't think that is an option, like theologically. But oh man, let me see. There is. Hang on, I got something on that I wrote about basically the real and the false passion of the church. Oh wait, here we go. The mystical passion of the church, dreadful reality versus delusive counterfeit. Because a lot of people bring up, you know, okay, the church has to undergo her own passion, like our Lord did, right? And
I think that's the position I take. I think the church is going through her passion right now. That would be the position I take.
I do too. But here's the thing: like people will a lot of recognize and resist people think that they can use that, and that kind of gets them out of all the problems in their theology, but it really doesn't. Because regardless of whether it's the passion or not, it still has to be compatible with Catholic doctrine, right? And so I put together, let me just read a little bit of these. So I wanted to contrast what I consider the genuine passion of the church that is compatible with Catholic doctrine, how that differs from the counterfeit passion of the church, which contradicts Catholic doctrine, okay? So let me just briefly, let me describe briefly the counterfeit passion of the church, which is what I hear the recognize and resist people saying. So, for example, the vicar of Christ is persecuting the faithful. The Pope is no longer the proximate rule of faith. And they may not say it like that, but that's usually what they're saying. And right, the church has abandoned her mission and no longer actively seeks to make converts. The church introduces sacrilegious liturgical rites, sacramental rites, harmful laws, and false teachings. The church is no longer a reliable guide to salvation. Jesus Christ is persecuted by his vicar. The ark of salvation has become the ark of damnation. There is a higher authority in the church than the Pope, to which the faithful can and must turn when the Pope teaches poisonous errors. Right? The vicar of Christ is also the vicar of Antichrist. Papal teachings and decrees have no force if papal teachings and decrees have no force if, a Canadian beard oil salesman on YouTube disagrees. Sorry, Kennedy. Liturgical laws are subject.
You are going to make me have so many fights after this show. Do you have any idea they're chewing?
You have a lot to talk about in the next weeks. Huh?
That's right. Well, liturgical laws are subject to approval by a retired philosophy professor from the United States. And this is essentially, I mean, honestly, that is totally Peter Kwasniewski's position, right? Because I mean, he's out there talking about how remember, so he believed Francis was a true pope, right? And when Francis was still alive, Kwasniewski would go out there and say that Traditionis Custodes, the document suppressing the Latin Mass, is absolutely null and utterly void from the first letter to its last punctuation mark. He just kind of declared that on his own authority, of course. And so he's effectively overruling the man he insists is the vicar of Christ. Okay, so this is what I call the counterfeit passion. Like this sort of passion of the church cannot possibly be real, because this is like contradicts Catholic teaching all over the place. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me just then briefly go into what I consider the genuine passion of the church, which it's especially since you asked me about, okay, well, where is this Peter fleeing or is this Peter denying Christ, whatever. Well, here's what I would say characterizes the real passion of the church. The chief shepherd is struck, and so the sheep are scattered, which is exactly what we're seeing, right? The mystical body, the church, is persecuted by its enemies, by false apostles and deceitful workmen, to use transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ, to use a quote from 2 Corinthians 11:13, and by them that say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. That's Apocalypse 2:9. Okay, Jesus Christ is persecuted in his vicar, right? Whenever the popes spoke about plots against the church, it was always that the plots were always attacking the papacy. Ultimately, it was always against the chair of St. Peter. That was their main goal. They wanted and needed to bring down that chair, because they knew that as long as that chair is intact, there is no way they can bring the church to her knees. So then the faithful are thrown into great confusion, just as in the real passion of the church. Many abandon the faith because they are scandalized by what has happened, just like a lot of people, which is why our Lord said, blessed is he who is not scandalized in me, right? A lot of people are scandalized today because of what they're seeing, just as people were back then. And Catholics are mocked and taunted for holding on to the true faith. The canonically public celebration of the holy sacrifice of the Mass has ceased, and the abomination of desolation stands in the holy place.
Okay, that's now in Apocalypse. That's only supposed to be for 3.5 years, though. You're talking about a 70-year period here, right?
Or well, whatever the Novus Ordo would have, come along.
From 1970s.
True. That is, well.
That was something I wanted to actually bring up. So if the holy sacrifice of the Mass stopped, and you're bringing in the abomination of desolation with that, like it's supposed to be for 3.5 years. Like, I think the closest glimpse we really got to that was during COVID, where we got 3.5 months.
Okay, but during COVID, I mean, and it was actually a blessing. I'm sorry, I'm speaking a little bit tongue in cheek, but essentially, right? I mean, they were basically shutting down the Novus Ordo. It's like, yes, but no, okay. So the 3.5 years, I don't know enough about prophecy and stuff and biblical interpretation to know whether or not that is literally 3.5 years, or if that's symbolic or whatever. But I'll grant you that would be certainly something that would seem to go against it. But then you would have to say that if it's not the abomination of desolation, well, I guess then it's the holy sacrifice of the Mass, right? So go attend it, right? Yeah, is what I would say.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I would still hold the Novus Ordo is the Mass.
I see. Okay,
yeah, and then, I would still hold the Novus Ordo is the. I don't like the way it's presented, but I do think. I think almost like those Eucharistic miracles that you said you don't even pay attention. I think those Eucharistic miracles are actually there for someone like me who might have had doubt that the Novus Ordo was valid, and it's just the position I hold,
Okay. I would just say, beware though, because of the Lord, warned us about the false miracles. So but okay, we already talked about that. Then the remnant faithful in our day flee to the mountains, right? Matthew 24:16. They flee to the mountains to preserve the faith and the sacraments, right? It's a way of like, okay, we have to abandon the churches that used to be ours because there's a strange new religion in those churches, right? The vicar of Christ is somehow taken out of the way. That's a quote from 2 Thessalonians 2:7. It doesn't say the vicar of Christ. It talks about the restraining force that will be taken out of the way, and then the mystery of iniquity can can do its thing. And so it seems to me that that would be a good way to describe like the death of Pope Pius XII. A false pope is put in. Who knows how they did it? I honestly, I don't know.
You see, but all of this is theory. It's like it's theory. You know what I mean?
That's theory. I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's just a theory. It's like, okay, you know, like all of this stuff we're talking about. It's like how to interpret prophecy, how to see the passion of the church. Yeah. It's all just a theory. It's a good theory, but it's theory.
No, I'm not saying, okay, right now I'm not saying that my view of 2 Thessalonians 2:7 proves Sedevacantism, right? No, I'm just saying how you can make the case that it is compatible. Like, you know, in other words, it's not absurd.
Yeah. What were you saying about David? Like when David passes, there's no king for centuries, right? So I mean,
yes, that's right. That's right.
So Christ comes.
Right, the Davidic line. It seems to be, I don't know if interrupted is the right word, but it's almost like, okay, well, where's the successor to King David, right? Yeah. And it isn't until, so there's just so much we don't know.
I do think the 3.5 years is literal, though, from the fathers. I'm pretty sure the fathers say that 3.5 year period is literal. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
People the conversation is going to go nowhere. I mean, we were never coming on to debate. We were just, I don't know. I just thought it would be a fun conversation to come on.
Yes. And I think we need to finally, you know, look, we're all adults here. We can just like have a conversation about these things because these are burning issues. And so it's important, right? Why is it that Sedevacantism is always so, it's always like the ugly duckling, right? It has to be, you can't talk about it. You can't mention it. Oh, great! My light's going off.
Well, I wouldn't want to debate it because I'm not sure it's wrong. Like, I don't want to debate it because I'm not sure if it's wrong. Like that's really the position I hold. I don't know. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting case for it. It's just I don't know.
And I want to make people. First of all, it kind of goes back to what we said in the beginning. Forget about like connecting Sedevacantism to the Diamond Brothers. Forget the Diamond Brothers. They're not important. They're not even Catholics. Okay, they're Feniites. They lead people in a way. They lead them like they advertise the Catholic Church, the infallible Catholic Church, and then they make people really hate the Church with their Feniite doctrine, in which they. They keep telling you there's no salvation inside the church, and then you find out it seems like they're saying there's no salvation inside the church either, because it seems like nobody but them understands what the church really teaches, right? And so forget the Diamond Brothers. Sedevacantism has nothing to do with the Diamond Brothers per se.
What are the different Sedevacantist positions though? Like what is it that like this, like you have the SSPV, then you have whatever Mel Gibson was a set of privation. And it's like what are these different positions that you guys don't agree on?
So there, I think basically you have. Let's see, I would divide it into 3 main strands, if you will, and some people are going to say, see, you're not unified, you don't have unity. Well, these are things these are things where the church has not clearly spoken. The church didn't clearly speak about these things before Vatican II, which is why we have disagreement now about exactly what is the right position and so forth. So these were things that could have been debated before Vatican II as well. It doesn't prove any sort of like lack of unity in the way the people who make this objection mean it. So I would say, yes. So Sedeprivationism, I'll explain in a minute, which is essentially the Institute of the Mother of Good Counsel in Italy, right? And here in the United States, it's the Roman Catholic Institute with Bishop Sanborn. And I'm sure there are a number of, there might be some smaller groups around the world that I'm not aware of, or, individual priests maybe. Then there is what they would call the totalist position, basically the Sedevacantist position held by I don't know. I guess is it most Sedevacantists? I'm not sure, but certainly the CMRI, majority, the Congregation of Mary Immaculate Queen, and various individual priests. And then there is what I would call the SSPV position, which is more of a like opinionism, more like, well, yeah, we don't believe the Vatican II, and all these men are popes, but that's just our opinion, and you don't have to hold that opinion as long as you resist the changes. Okay, so that's kind of is that a fair? What do you think, Kevin? Is that pretty much the three main?
Yeah, I think
strands of Sedevacantism, right?
That sounds
And then
about right. Yeah.
let me maybe. Have you heard of? Well, obviously you've heard of Sedeprivationism, Anthony, because you keep bringing, or you've brought it up.
No, I just know that I think that's Mel Gibson's position, right? It's like if a pope can be elected, when the pope's elected, he's valid until he says something heretical or something.
Oh, no, that's not Sedeprivationism. Although no, in fact, that would, I don't believe that is that position could be admitted at all, because it would mean, well, let's not get into that now. I was going to say that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just genuinely.
Right. No. So the Sedeprivationism, also known as the material formal thesis or the Cassiciacum thesis, it was originally developed by Bishop Gerard de Laurier, who was apparently an advisor to Pope Pius XII on the dogma of the Assumption when he was a priest. He became a bishop only in 1981, I believe it was. But so that position essentially holds that the Novus Ordo popes, they're not true popes, but they do have a valid designation to the papal office, because lawful electors chose them to the papal office, but they did not validly accept that office. So for each election of the Pope, it's twofold, right? First, you have the number of votes, right? That like the required majority for the candidate. And then the candidate, though, before he becomes Pope, it's not enough that he have the majority. He also has to accept the election, right? And until he accepts the election, he's Pope-elect, if you want to call it that, right? So this is what they would call the material Pope. He's Pope, a person who has the required designation, in this case, the sufficient number of votes, is Pope materially, but not formally until he validly accepts the election. Now, in the case of St. Pius X, for example, he was elected. He had the majority, but he did not accept immediately. He asked permission of Cardinal Dean or whoever, said whether he would be allowed to offer Mass first before he makes a decision. And the permission was granted, and he offered Mass. During that time, he was Pope-elect, right? He was not Pope yet because he hadn't accepted, but he did have the designation. So what happens then is, okay, so then the Pope, Cardinal Sarto, of course, accepted the election. The Sedeprivationist thesis says that in the case of Roncalli, Montini, Luciani, Wojtyła, Ratzinger, Bergoglio, and now Prevost, the election, even though they verbally accepted, it was not a valid acceptance of the office because they objectively had the intention to impose a different religion on the Catholic Church than the Catholic faith.
Now, you wouldn't hold that position?
I personally do not. But I also don't like. I'm kind of, I guess, neutral on the matter. I wouldn't say it's true. I also wouldn't say it's false necessarily. I'm not really sure, and I'm always happy to learn more about the pro and con. But what may seem like a kind of you're kind of smirking a little bit.
No, listen, I'm not, and I don't want.
No, it's not
anything to come off like I'm insulting. It's just
no.
All of this stuff just it's like.
I've kind of explained, in case you want a link to where you can read, but I've explained it's not as to some people this may just sound absurd, but it's really not. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's false. But what is definitely true is that oh, hang on. I'm not sure I can get this together now. I don't want to say anything wrong. So they're saying essentially that they didn't validly accept the office because their intention was to change Catholic teaching. Yes.
Yeah,
now, At least, well, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but at least it's an explanation, right?
Yeah.
It would explain why this happened. And here's one thing that the Sedevacantism thesis can do. It can actually solve the problem of how are we going to get a pope back? Because
if you got a real Catholic bishop,
essentially,
like pope,
what they're saying is the Novus Ordo conclave could actually produce a true pope if only they chose a man who is actually who is not intending to do this, who is willing to restore the Catholic faith. Okay, so they would hold
the ordinations and everything are valid then.
No, ordination has nothing to do with it. It is more like designation to. Are you saying because of the cardinals?
Well, for a Novus Ordo to even produce a bishop or a cardinal that could do that, that would mean he'd have to be a valid bishop to begin with. Right?
You don't have to be a valid bishop to be elected pope.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right. So no, that would be a different matter. But they do say that the Novus Ordo cardinals, they may or may not be legitimate cardinals according to that thesis, but they are valid electors. Okay. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just describing the thesis, okay, that they hold. And so the big advantage of that thesis is that it has a clean way out, so to speak. It has a clean solution. Although I think it has other difficulties or whatever. But no matter what position you take, you're going to run into some difficulties. Certainly the Novus Ordo position is filled with difficulties, right? Like, for example, which do you believe? For example, do you believe that the Jews have to convert to Catholicism or not? Right? I mean, you can't hold both that they do and that they don't, just as an example.
I don't think the Novus Ordo teaches that there's salvation in the Old Covenant. I don't think they.
Francis certainly did.
Well, to say so for John Paul II even to say God doesn't revoke his covenant, he's quoting Romans, but also he doesn't revoke his covenant. Also means he doesn't revoke the curses, right? So like the Jews would be cursed under that covenant because they didn't follow the covenant. So I mean, you can get around that one, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure we can. Branch into that now, but
yeah,
right now, that's kind of a yes. I would ask.
We should pick a specific topic and hammer down on it on another episode because I honestly just wanted to get to ask a few questions that I've never gotten to ask anybody before.
Sure.
All the exposure I've had to Sedevacantism is typically like people online who mainly just point out the issues in the Novus Ordo, which I would agree with. And I wanted to kind of get to what do we do going forward, and how do we even know this happened? Like I don't know, man. It's just a lot. I just think we're all in
yes, and especially if you're relatively new to this, it's
I'm relatively new to tradition, man. Like I grew up in the Novus Ordo and just started attending Latin Mass 7 years ago, so. Okay.
Yeah. Kevin, did we want to maybe take some questions from the chat or something?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, if anyone, the chat's going so fast, I certainly have not gotten everyone's questions. If you guys have any now, we would definitely be glad to take them here. We'll probably stick around for another, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to answer your questions. Thank you all for the super chats, those who sent those. That's pretty awesome and unusual. Mario and I are going to have to find a way to split those, I suppose. And
no. I don't. No. You can keep them.
All right. God bless you. Awesome. No, but thank you everyone in the chat. It's really been interesting. I could not keep up with everyone, but certainly Anthony brought in a crowd that made for a very interesting debate in the chat, which I think is cool. Because, and some of it was a little uncharitable from both sides, I think. But I think that's in the end, Anthony, I'm really glad you came on. I mean, very seriously, I think it's just good to have these conversations. As you said, no one's trying to convince anybody. It's not we're not fighting. It's just like, hey, let's just talk these things through, because in the end, we all want to be Catholic, right? We all want to go to heaven. We all want to do what's right and what's true. Yes. So what's the problem with just talking these things through? And I think I really appreciate you coming on, because I think that shows because I think that's something we saw during COVID, right? The cancel culture. That I can't if I rub elbows with him, then I'm going to have that disgusting germ.
That's right.
It's like it's not the way. I mean,
the guilt by association,
exactly.
and it's like I'm telling you, like I don't like anybody telling me I can't talk to somebody. Like I don't, it's like I don't see the problem with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I was actually interested in a couple of things, and I wanted to ask a bunch of questions. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
I appreciate it. Okay, here's a question from Matthew. Matt, my buddy who does a show with me, used to be on Monday mornings. He says, Mario, can you speak a bit on the pre-Vatican teachings on religious liberty? Now, obviously, guys, we're going to wrap this up, so Mario, you're going to have to give maybe a brief answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not prepared for that particular. It's not like I have all the quotes handy.
Yeah,
it's
tough to put you on the spot.
I mean, essentially, of course, the view was always until the death of Pope Pius XII that no, man does not have a right to religious liberty, because error has no rights. Okay, obviously, if God establishes one religion, then you do not have the right to choose a different one. Now, that doesn't mean that whoever is not Catholic, is going to be persecuted or anything. It's a completely separate thing. We're simply talking about, can you have the right, all right, before God, or then the state is another question. If it's a Catholic confessional state, obviously you don't have the right to be a Protestant. You can perhaps be a Protestant and they'll leave you alone. Or you can maybe be a Protestant and you won't be allowed to have, the state may not allow you to build a Protestant church, but whatever you do in your home is your own business. Okay. Religious liberty was condemned by Popes Gregory the 16th, Pius the 9th, Pius the 7th, and so forth. And it's actually fairly easy to prove, with all the stuff that we have at our disposal, all the resources and stuff, that the teaching at Vatican II was novel, was new. This is not something that had been taught before. And the very man who was most responsible for getting the council to adopt this, which was John Courtney Murray, he is the one who actually developed that doctrine. And just a few years prior to the council, he had been censured by he was silenced by his superiors. He was a Jesuit for teaching that very thing. Okay, they told him, you need to stop. And I'm sure that I can't remember now, but I'm sure the Holy Office was involved and said, you got to be quiet.
This is one of the biggest issues. The SSPX takes this is one of their biggest issues, religious liberty for the society.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes,
all right,
yes.
Moving on to the next. Here's a question for Anthony. Thank you, E-Girl, for the super chat. Does Tony think Paul VI is a saint?
I question a lot of the post-conciliar canonizations. I got to be honest. I think that. Yeah, I know you guys think I have a lot of contradictions, but yeah, I question calling the man who decimated the sacraments of the church like that. Yeah, I question it. So I don't know. I've never prayed to him, if that's what you're asking. Do I think he could be in heaven if he gave but to say someone's a saint, really usually what the Catholic Church would mean is this person lived a life of extraordinary virtue that you could emulate. And I don't see that in Paul VI.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right. I agree.
Okay, go ahead, Mario. You want to go ahead?
No, I just saw something come through here where somebody said, this is a follow-up to what I said, error has no rights, but error holders have some rights. Well, they do have some rights, but they don't have the right to religious liberty, and that's the point.
Right. Okay, here's a question again for Anthony. Would you be willing to have a Sedevacantis priest or bishop on your show to discuss, ask questions? Might be a good discussion. Or Mario, perhaps.
I don't know. I never thought about it.
I put you on the spot.
I never thought about it. Yeah. I mean, I've probably had a Sedevacantis priest on without knowing, to be honest.
No, I think they mean as a guest.
No, I know
right.
priest. I know priest. Well, no, I do mean as a guest, but I don't know if there are 58 Sede. There's been a lot of. That's what's interesting because I wouldn't consider somebody who thinks Francis was not a valid pope a Sedevacantis. Like when you hear Sedevacantis, you mean 1958 Sedevacantis. So, but I do know a few priests who, I mean, you like what's his name? Who's the guy who, oh man, famous. He's like Bishop Strickland's friend.
Ripburger? No.
No. He was like a Nova. He was railing against the Novus Ordo, and then he goes to a guitar mass Novus Ordo and
Really?
celebrated it. What's his name? Altman. Father Altman. Like Father Altman. I don't think he's a 58
That's
cent.
right.
Like
Yeah.
Father Altman's an enigma, dude. He's like he thinks that Leo and Francis were anti-popes, but he's like, dude, there's nobody weirder to me than the Novus Ordo Sedevacantists. Like that is just such a weird thing to me.
Yeah.
Wanting your cake and eating it too, I think a little bit there. Good boy. Let's see. So many comments to try to scroll through. No, I think I'll ask you a question, Anthony. Who's your favorite guest you've had on your show? Because it's an interesting thing. Because I know as a host, there are people who are like, okay, this is a really good one. I really enjoy this. And then there's others like Mario, which is like, oh my gosh, do I have to talk to this?
I really
Just kidding.
I'll always love the episode I did with Father Isaac. I had him at my house. He had dinner with me, and like he came on, and we just talked about young men and stuff. And so he was one of my favorites. Man, I've had a lot of guests. I'd have to think about that.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. Here's one for Mario. A couple more questions, guys, and we're gonna head out. What is Mario's position on Father Maudsley? He's another one that Anthony mentioned him earlier. I know his name, but I don't know much about him.
Yeah,
so Mario,
Father James Maudsley. I think he was formerly with the Fraternity of St. Peter. He used to be, if I'm not mistaken, he used to be a prisoner in Burma, in Myanmar. Yeah, he's got quite interesting. First of all, I really respect him based on what he seems like a very upright character. It's funny you should bring that up, Father Maudsley, because I'm getting ready to make a podcast responding to some of the things. There are some real errors he is promoting regarding the church's liturgy and the papacy. And I mean, unwittingly, I'm sure he doesn't realize it. But I was going to respond to that, and I was going to do it during Easter week. But on Easter Monday, Bergoglio died, and that, of course, there went my.
You should get him on. I think you'd have a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I've never actually me personally, I've never done any interviews with Tradcast or anything, and I don't think I'm going to. I don't know. It's just not my thing.
I'll do it with you, Mario.
But I figure I'll just come on other people's shows. That'll be enough.
Yep, that's what we do. Here's another one. Do you believe Pope Francis professed the true faith? I think that's obviously for Anthony.
Cardinal Took.
I've said this on my show. Like I don't even like the hardest question for me to ever answer was when somebody said, because it was like, oh, is Francis a valid pope? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, was Francis Catholic? I'm like, oh man, that's a hard one. Like I don't know what he is, but I don't believe the same thing he did. I know that. Like, so.
Well, no, but that's such a candid, like, okay answer, right? But remember the answer that Eric Sammons gave on Twitter to that question? It was insane. No, wait, was it on Twitter? Maybe it wasn't on Twitter. No, I think it was on Twitter. Eric Sammons said Francis professes the faith sometimes. Okay.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry, but that is such a disaster of an answer. And I took it apart in a Tradcast.
I hold that Francis could have been an anti-pope. Like I don't know. I don't know. I think it was absurd the things that he presented, and I don't know. This is all just it's kind of like this, like you were saying earlier, like the mystery of it. Like I do think we are in a very mysterious time, and it is very apocalyptic. That's what I think we are in apocalyptic times. I don't think this is just some crisis the church is going through. I think this is
the last one before the Antichrist or something like that.
Yes,
right?
Like for sure.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, I guess on my side, I mean, I think it could be apocalyptic, but I also see what you don't see, Anthony, and I don't blame you, obviously, is that the Sedevacantists, the traditional Catholic movement, is really growing. It's really flourishing. I mean, I have a brother who's a priest and two sisters who are nuns, and nuns in full habits, and they go and they teach, and it grows, and it happened a lot especially during COVID, because Novus Ordo closed their doors and the Sedevacantists did everything they could to keep them open to provide the sacraments. And I think that's something that I totally get for someone who can only see from the internet, which, again, I'm not blaming you. That makes sense. And I think oftentimes you do get, especially the Diamondites and the Atheniites, they're the ones who you mostly see. And I think that's, if anyone watching this, I think that's the thing I would like to leave everyone with, is that a lot of the times that the view people have of Sedevacantists is based off of exactly the Diamondites, etc. And so try to go and look at the actual positions if you can. Go to cmri.org, go to novusordowatch.org, go look at Louis Verrecchio, aka Catholic.com. Watch our videos with Louis Verrecchio. I think that there's a lot of truth about, again, the Vatican II documents. And I think if you watch these shows and if you see the actual documents compared to the documents of the church pre-Vatican II, it's going to blow your minds. And I highly recommend everyone do that, because again, as we said, everyone's looking for truth. We all just want to do what's best. So thank you to Mario for coming on. Mario, again, Novus Ordo Watch, Avoiding Babylon on YouTube. And thank you again to everyone in the comment section. Please, everyone who's still here, like, share, subscribe. Make sure that if you come back on the video, leave your comments and questions. And I would love to do it again, perhaps with Anthony and Mario here. Perhaps Mario will go over with Anthony on his channel. That would be great as well. Anthony, again, I really want to thank you once more just for coming on, having a charitable, nice, calm discussion. I think that's awesome. I think that we need much more of that in the Catholic world. And yeah, I hope you do it again sometime. I'll leave you guys with the last words. I don't know, Mario, I'll let you go next, and then we'll leave Anthony with the last words. So Mario, I don't know if you have anything you want to say before we go.
Let me quote the late Father Anthony Cicada, God rest his soul. He said all these something to the effect of, all these recognized resistors are really all Sedevacantists. They just don't know it yet. And I think what he meant by it is that all the like they're not following Francis or any of the Vatican II popes anyway. And the only way this is possible is if he's not the Pope. And considering the great confusion and everything, that the very fact that we're here talking, trying to figure out, which is the right position, is proof that there is no Pope, and that's just something I would like to leave everybody with tonight. If you look at the pre-Vatican II teaching on the purpose of the papacy, the nature of the papacy, the authority of the papacy, what the papacy does for the Catholic Church, if you look at all that, there's no way you could affirm that the post-Vatican II claimants are really popes of the Catholic Church.
I'll leave off just saying I'm very grateful to both of you having me on. Mario, they may all call you a villain, but they all read Novus Ordo Watch.
They certainly all seem to know about it.
I'll tell you, when I got my follow from you on Twitter, I was starstruck. I was like, I got Novus Ordo Watch follow.
Oh, really? Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think we're in some perilous times right now, man, and I don't know. I think conversations are good. So I'm glad I came on and hung with you guys. It was nice meeting both of you. You guys are both gentlemen.
Awesome.
You too.
All right, let's do it again sometimes. Everyone in the chat, thank you again. We'll see